knowledge work is changing too fast and you can't keep up. But there's one sentence that if you take heed of will actually stop you from completely falling off the wagon and will keep you in a position to actually get to a place where everything that you're doing has way more leverage than you would ever realize. And it comes from Mr. Hormozy itself. In this reel, he mentions this sentence: you cannot have an AI first business without first having a data centric business. Now, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about in this here that I have hidden, but this is the key. And this is something that's been the case for forever, and nobody's really taken heed of this. Every single AI automation that you make, if it does not follow the rule of payload augmentation that I have always spoken about on this channel, where you trigger, you read a database, or you read a bunch of items, or you read data that you own, and then you run your automations, then everything that you will ever do will always be siloed off in places where you cannot reach them and cannot access them. And the reason why what he's saying is so pivotal is because of something that I like to call, or I don't even like to call it, it's not even me who said it, the Lindy effect. The Lindy effect is a theory that basically states that the future life expectancy of non-perishable things is proportional to its current age. The longer it survived, the longer it's likely to last. Age presumes robustness. Paper is not going out of fashion anytime soon. Tables aren't going out of fashion anytime soon. Computers are more likely to go out of fashion before paper and pen does. This is what the Lindy effect is talking about. And again, it's a heuristic, it's a theory. Is it 100%? No, it's not. But what I want to do today is show you how this rule will help you understand how to pick your tech stack in 2026 and beyond. And the way that we're going to start this off is with 5 or 6 really, really important points. And this is the first one. An API must be present. Table stakes nowadays, absolutely table stakes. I've worked with a number of different clients now at this point who have had the most archaic tech stacks that make their work absolute drudgery. And if they had moved to the competitor that was just a little bit newer, their life would be 4,000 times easier. Now, an API is as simple as when I search up the tool, can I look up Zapier integration and find other triggers and actions associated with it? So I'm going to show you some examples of what I would call a healthy API is versus a very much not healthy API. So if we go for, let's take an unhealthy API, TaxDome Zapier integration. TaxDome sucks. TaxDome's horrible. It's actually not as bad as some others, but when it comes to what you can do, this is what you can do inside of this tool called TaxDome. And TaxDome is a software that allows you to, it basically allows tax planners and tax consultants, etc., to manage tax returns for their clients and tax resolutions and a bunch of other things as well. You can create a contact, delete a contact, update a contact, and do the same thing with an account. You can do a couple more. Yeah, you can find an account as well, or find or create an account. Okay, now this is quite bad. It's quite bad. And the reason why I say it's quite bad is because the actual actions or the things that you can manipulate aren't really extensive. And the extra issue, which is, and this is going to be another point I'm going to talk about in the video, is that the way that it's categorized and the way that it actually is displayed inside of the way that TaxDome is actually laid out, it's not very relational. And I'll talk about that in a second. But that means that even if you have limited actions, it doesn't carry a lot of weight. However, if I go and I look for, let's say, Smart Lead, which I think will probably will fare better if I look at the API. Smart Lead is a cold email platform, and just look at all of the actions you can do. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like everything that you can do here, they've actually added more since the last time I was here. So you can see that everything's in different sections. So you've got this thing here called Smart Prospect. You've got all of the master inbox actions. You've got global analytics actions. You've got smart senders actions, client management actions, webhook actions. You've got smart delivery, campaign statistics, email accounts, lead management, campaign management. There's probably about 60 or 70 different actions here. Whatever you are using nowadays has to have an API, and that API really and truly needs to be very, 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 very healthy. So that's the first one. Number two, you need this. You need at least one relational database. So what's a relational database? A relational database is Airtable, Supabase, Firebase, MongoDB. Some of these other ones are really unnecessary, but the two main ones are Airtable and Supabase. You need to have one of them present. The reason being, you cannot do any of this without a relational database. So what am I looking at here? This here is the pyramid / hierarchy that I basically show to clients to describe exactly how things get built when they work with me. The very first thing is a backend data warehouse. It's databases with client, team, and project information. And just like Hormozi said, you cannot have an AI first business without first having a data centric business. He goes on in this video to actually talk about what's more important, which is the organization of your data and having proprietary data in and of itself, data that people don't actually have access to. If you do not have access to data that is pertinent to the things that you are doing for your clients, and or things that other people just don't have because it comes from your specific knowledge and what your experiences are, and it's just, SOP documentation, which has everything that you have ever done in the way that you do it, which generates a specific result, a specific return, etc., then what you are losing out on is the ability to leverage everything that is coming out now. And one of the bigger things that are a problem with not being able to, or not having a relational database, is that when you get into a situation where you need to be able to run payload augmentation, which again, for us to revisit, is the introduction of business context into the automation playground, which is what happens when you use GET requests to make your data pool so big that you can make any automation or agent do exactly what you want, i.e. trigger, read, automate. You cannot read if you do not have a good relational database. And if you are going to read, the only issue that you have is that you can't actually bring the information in without having to remake a bunch of automations. So for example, let me see if I can draw this out. If I have an automation which is, let's say someone replies to me over cold email. So I get a new reply, and then once that new reply comes in, I look for the client that is associated with the campaign, and then I grab their information on how to respond to specific campaigns. And then we run an agent to generate said response. And then we send the response immediately. I cannot do this step, which is actually a GET request, if I do not have that information. What I would have to do every single time if I did not have this right here, which is only possible to have when you have a database full of people that you can look up, because again, this reply could come in for any campaign. It will come with information that I can then match to a database where I'm keeping some of these IDs. If it matches, then it matches to a client. That client has a document which I can read for an SOP on how to reply. And I can also read whatever the categorizations are, read whatever the next step needs to be, and then the agent can do what it needs to do. Without this, it looks like this. You get a new reply. Then you run the agent on set data, and then you respond immediately. The only problem with this is you have to make this for client 1, and then you have to make it again for client 2, and then again for client 3, and then again for client 4, and so on and so forth. So every single time you speak to a specific client or you bring on a specific client, if you do not have the relational database, you're going to be making this automation every single time you close a new client, which is a absolute waste of time, especially if what you're doing is very, very high volume. This will not compound if you are small. This compounds the moment that you have an actual sizable amount of clients. So this is the reason why we need relational database, at least one. And that is thing number 2. Now, what is thing number 3? Thing number 3 is you need to be documentation heavy. Now, what does being documentation heavy mean? Well, here, if we take, I'll just say you need to be documentation heavy. To be documentation heavy is to have a lot of stuff written down that, again, is specific knowledge for the way that you run things. And you need a way to manage this. So if we're talking about a tech stack that will enable this, this is now where we are talking about things like vector databases. It's where we're talking about knowledge graphs. It's where we're talking about taking things that are coming from your clients, coming from your calls, and having a way to take all of the documents and take all of the text and all of the media, chunk it, truncate it, sort it out, and put it into places that aren't specifically restricted to the way that a relational database is, but is just bits of information floating around in the ether. So what we're actually doing here is we're taking the concept of relational databases, which are used to make a ton of different apps, and then we're also taking non-relational databases, because there are 2 different types of databases there. Not everything is laid out the way a spreadsheet is. There are certain types of database which are basically documents. This is what I'm talking about here. And you can do this really effectively with just Google Drive. Google Drive in and of itself actually works for this particular notion. However, Notion does as well, and a ton of other places where you can just hold a lot of documentation and make an effort to create said documentation. This is where things are going to be really, really useful for you. And if you stay documentation heavy, then when agents take over, what will end up happening is when you have, for example, your cursor flows where you have specific agentic workflows. I don't have any. Oh no, I do have one up. When you have specific agentic workflows that are meant to do certain things, everything is going to turn into markdown files. Everything's going to turn into .md files. So this here is an example of a workflow that I made for a client, which was a scraping workflow for a specific use case. And if you can keep this, which is essentially an SOP for some code, and you just have them on deck and you can relate to them in some way, shape or form, or you can bring them in from some place or some other area, you can now benefit from what the new AIs that are coming out are going to be able to give you. So even if you don't have your stuff together right now when it comes to what you would use in order to leverage AI and where things are going, if you are documentation heavy, you're keeping documents, you're writing documents, and you're writing down how things are meant to work, your special sauce, your secret sauce, the way that things are meant to run in your business, or the way that you can generate certain results, even if it's lead magnets and sales assets, if you have that information, you're good. And that's the reason why you need this, for it to be an actually useful element of your tech stack. Number 4, and I'm starting to lose a little bit of space, so I'm gonna have to move some of this stuff out of the way. All right, number 4, you need some agentic capability. You need some. Now, what am I talking about here? The easiest way to think about agentic capability is AI connected to tools. AI connected to tools on the simplest side of things is having a Claude account with connectors or a ChatGPT account with plugins. That in and of itself, to where you can speak to your own Claude, whether it be your own Claude projects or just the chat in and of itself, if you have that, you now are in a position where you can take all of the information that you have that is inside of those projects, connect the connectors that you need, and then do stuff. And if you can just do a few things, then you're good to go. That is on the low end. On the far end, or I would say medium end at this point, is having some sort of Claude co-work or maybe even Cursor if you're getting into that kind of side of things. But I would say Claude Cowork is going to be where things are going to start moving for a lot of knowledge workers anyways. You need to just get into it and just like try it out and learn it, because if you are documentation heavy already and you have a relational database and you work with a tech stack that has APIs, for the most part, it will be actually quite easy for you to get the agentic capabilities that you know actually working for you in a way that actually generates and delivers results for you. And then on the far end is Cursor, Claude Code, and diving into some of the stuff that I've started showing on my channel as well. The final step is you need to be making your tech stack. Now, I'm going to drop some gems here. So I'm going to open up a tool that a good friend of mine made. And this isn't sponsored. Like, this is actually because this is something that has been popping up for a lot of people. And even though agentic workflows is a massive thing, people are creating apps. So why are you not creating your own apps? So give me 1 second. I'm actually going to show you something called CodeSpring. So this is CodeSpring. What the hell are you looking at? All right, let's zoom in. So what this is a playground where you can create an idea for an app, internal app or external, and you speak to the AI over here, and it will walk you through every single element that you would need in order for you to get the full stack developed. And what the result is as follows. So you have a tech stack here, which is generally just all of the things that you're going to need in order for this to do the things that you've said that it needs to do. So here you can see it's Postgres, Betterauth, Railway, cron workers, Resend, Hono, Tailwind, TypeScript, Next.js, React, ShadCN, UI elements, etc. You don't need to know what these all mean. You can basically look it up, and it will also tell you what these are as well. Then you have features. Now, this app here is an idea that I had, and the whole idea behind this is that I wanted to create a no login content review portal on top of my Airtable. It shows items from client Airtable bases in a clean review UI, which is accessible via a secure link instead of a login. The reason being, and this is not just for myself, this is also for all of the people that do content creation. Whenever a client of mine has a content calendar that they want to share with a client, there are two options. One, Softer stinks. I actually just don't like Softer anymore. And two, Airtable shared views. Airtable shared views actually isn't too bad. And what Airtable shared views looks like is basically just like a calendar view, but it's read only. And when you click into each of the items, you just get the ugly old version of Airtable when you want to actually look at it. My alternative was create one that can be accessed through a review link, and that review link could actually be posted to a Slack channel when someone gets onboarded. So I could have, and if you see in my channel, I have examples of my onboarding automations, especially my newest ones where I'm running a bunch of sub workflows. I could have one of my sub workflows be a HTTP request to my own app, and that request will basically generate that link, and then it will put it inside of my Airtable, and then it can be used and provided to the client so that they know exactly what they need to do for their work. So what I wanted to actually get done is to have this approval and request changes flow for my clients so that they could actually make this all work for themselves without having to use option one, which is Softer, which stinks, and option two, which is the Airtable views, because you have to actually make every single Airtable view from scratch, and it doesn't just generate automatically. What this ended up doing was it created a few different things which are branches of these features. The features are as follows. We have the Airtable notes, which here is just almost a summary of all of the information that's down here, and a couple of questions that are open questions that if you put this into plan mode inside the Cursor and inside the Claude Code, etc., will show you, more so Cursor, I think this is built mostly for Cursor, will show you exactly how this is going to work. Then you have a PRD bridge. Now, what is a PRD? A PRD is a product requirement document. A product requirement document is, I can even show you, it looks very much just like this. So you can see here, it is a very in-depth document which is written in words and verbiage that developers would use to describe things in infinitely minute detail. So you can see here the token format and storage. Public tokens are opaque. Token ID secret. Token ID length is 16 to 24. The secret length is 32 characters in base 64 URL or hex. You can see here that there's API endpoints being created. This is a GET request to a URL which has this slug. This is a patch request to a URL with this slug. This is all stuff that's going to be hosted on Railway, just based on what I know about it anyways. And you can just see there's a bunch of stuff here that you probably have no understanding or no idea of, which is absolutely fine, because the moment you get these all created for your features, there's an MCP, which is basically just an integration between this tool and your cursor, which you can connect. And once you connect it, you have all of the documents that have been made from this tool stuck right into your cursor. And then all you need to do is just in the chat, tag, build, tag, build, tag, build, and let the agents run wild. Next thing you know, you've one-shotted your own app. So this is where things are going in 2026. This is where it's really, really important to have an understanding as to what's possible. But even if you don't have the time to understand what's possible, because you don't want to be the guy who's tinkering around, looking at things he doesn't need to look at because it's make money season, which I 100% understand. Getting yourself into a position where you actually know what you can do versus what is out there right now and where things are going, to a point where if you just take heed of what I've said in this video, even if you pick this up in 2028, 2029, the likelihood is, because of the Lindy effect, the things that I've mentioned will be things that are going to benefit you moving forwards. So to summarize, the way that I would pick my tech stack in 2026 and beyond is as follows. Every single item that I use has an API, and it's a healthy API at that. I have at least one relational database. I'm documentation heavy or document heavy. There's some agentic capability, and I'm making my own tech stack as and when needed. This is all you need to think about when it comes to how you can run your business in 2026. And from here, all I would do is basically just look at the myriad of items and the myriad of pieces of tech that you can use, and use that as your search space, and then constrain that search to these 5 factors. Once you've constrained that search to these 5 factors, you'll find the tech stack that you need. There really isn't much else to it. And I can tell you for free, the ones that I'm looking forward to using a lot more are Airtable, as always, Supabase. I'm looking forward to using my Google Drive a lot more as well. I'm looking forward to using Cursor. I'm looking forward to using Claude Code. I will actually be using Claude Cowork at some point. I'd really want to get my hands dirty with that. I've been using Cursor for the most part. And then everything else that I need in order to fulfill what I need to fulfill. More often than not, especially when it comes to the automation side of things, leaning more towards NAN right now is more beneficial than leaning towards make.com. And the reason why is because when you're using NAN, there are now NAN skills. Those skills enable you to actually generate these NAN automations through prompts, without you having to click and clack and do all this other nonsense. Make.com isn't there yet. Make.com hasn't been there, and it's one of the big chagrins that I have, and there's a reason why an API is present. The API is not as healthy as it is with NAN, and it's not as compatible and forward-thinking as NAN is, because NAN has always been closer to AI agents. So Airtable, Supabase, NAN, because you will always need a visual builder for your critical infrastructure. You don't really want to have that hiding inside a cursor, because you're going to have to do so much in order to get into the problem, even if you are clicking and clacking away with agents. Google Drive, and anything else that I would need in order to fulfill my services, which includes all of the information that we've spoken above as well. So if you're looking for how I use Airtable, how I use Make.com, how I use NAN, how I use Cursor and Claude Code, there's videos all over the gaff. There's also a nice link in the description, which is going to give you more information about how I think about all of this anyways. Looking forward to seeing you in the next one.